Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. I've heard some people talking about painting their Grand Cathay army to look like the Terracotta Warriors, and I thought it might be fun to paint up a unit like that for my army. Last week we painted up some Jade Warriors in my custom color scheme, and while they were fun to paint, there's a lot of detail on them and they'll take a long time to finish. So I'd like to design a color scheme for these models that's quick to paint and fits in with the rest of the army. So grab your brushes and let's get started. I'd like these models to have a very uniform, almost robotic kind of look. So I chose the heads with faces that are more stoic and expressionless. I decided to get rid of the ponytail, and the gap on the helmet will need to be filled in with putty. This is a two-part epoxy putty commonly called green stuff. Mix the two parts together and it will cure in a couple hours. I roughly shaped the putty into the gaps and allowed it to cure overnight. I went back the next day and smoothed out the transition with a needle file. After assembling the models, I undercoated them with black primer and mounted them to corks for easier handling. I'll be using an airbrush for the first part of this, and if you don't have an airbrush, that's okay. I think you could also get great results by dry brushing instead. I began with a few layers of Bloodreaver flesh. I just use water to dilute my paints, but you could use your favorite medium if you like. I applied the paint all over, for the most part, with a little more paint on the upward facing sections. So while it's not a true zenithal style undercoat, it does have a slight emphasis on the top portion of the model. Next I highlighted the models with a few layers of Knight-Questor flesh, and I focused these layers on the top more than the bottom of the model. I think it would be a good idea to vary the amount of highlights from model to model. Since they're made out of clay, maybe there are some variations in the clay blend or the firing process which would cause different colors. With the airbrush base and highlights done, next I shaded the model with Darkoath flesh. Contrast paints work really well as shades too, and not just for base coats. I like to think of them as a very strong wash. Darkoath flesh has a warmer, orange tone to it, and I really like the look of it layered over those base coats. I gave the shade plenty of time to dry, and next I dry brushed Knight-Questor flesh all over the model, with more of an emphasis on the top. I like to use cheap craft brushes when dry brushing. I feel like I get good results from them, and I haven't seen the need to invest in anything else. They're also so inexpensive, when the brush starts to go bad, I don't feel guilty about having to throw it away. There are a lot of specialty dry brush products on the market, and feel free to use those if you like them. I'd like the models to have a dusty kind of look, like they've been sitting dormant for centuries, and the winds of magic just woke them up. A light, warm brown like Zandri dust should work out well. I dry brushed some over the model, focusing mostly on the bottom, but a little bit on the top as well. With such a monochromatic color palette, I think it's really important to add as many accent colors as possible. Otherwise the models will look boring. So I thought it might be cool if the weapons were real rather than terracotta. This will add some much needed color to the models, and it'll also help tie them in with the rest of the army. I painted a few of the weapon details with Runelord brass. Then I base coated the blades with Iron Hand steel. After the first layer dried, I painted a second for an even finish. Next I painted the tassels with Kabalite green. This color is semi-transparent and you may need 2 or even 3 layers for an opaque finish. Then I painted the champion's sword handle with Screamer pink. With those base coats all applied, next I shaded them with a mix I affectionately call Armor Wash. This is a mix of equal parts Ratling Grime, Contrast Medium, and Lamian Medium. This is a warm black tone, and it's stronger than the other shade paints straight out of the pot. If you don't feel like mixing anything, you could use Nuln Oil instead, but you may need a second layer for a dark enough finish. I painted the weapon shafts next with a couple layers of black paint. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, please consider Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. We have some perks including a Discord server, printer-friendly PDF files of our new recipe cards, and early access to videos. At this stage you could base the models and call them finished, but I'd like to add a couple more details and highlights, as well as a glowing effect, so let's keep going. I like to add oxidation to brass and bronze, so I painted some with thinned Ahriman blue paint. Dilute the paint with plenty of water, and with barely any paint on your brush, add a thin glaze wherever you'd like to add some color. I think the blue color is especially useful on these models to help break up all the brown tones. I highlighted the edges of the blades next with a narrow line of Stormhost silver. Next I highlighted a few strands on the tassels with an equal parts mix of Kabalite green and Sybarite green. Then I highlighted the sword handle wrap with pink horror. Next I highlighted the black with Incubi darkness. This is a deep greenish blue color, and that will complement the other jade tones, as well as provide a contrast to the warm terracotta colors on the rest of the model. Then I highlighted the black one more time with a very sharp line of Russ gray. I think a glowing effect would look really cool on these models. I like to imagine they've been sitting dormant for centuries, and they've just been brought to life by some kind of magic. I think if I paint the eyes and gemstones to look like they're glowing, it will help tell that kind of story. I began by painting a few glazes of Sybarite green. Thin the paint with water, and with barely any paint on the brush, apply thin layers near the area that you want to glow. There should be barely any paint on your brush, and it should dry almost as soon as it hits the model. If the paint runs or flows anywhere, it means you have too much paint on your brush. Build up a couple layers, one after another, and paint each layer a little bit closer to the source of the light. With the Sybarite green layer done, next I painted some pure white dots in the eyes and on the gems. I painted a second layer of white for a really bright finish. Finally, I painted a glaze of Aeldari emerald. I diluted the paint with a small amount of water, about 1 part water to 2 parts paint, and with barely any paint on the brush, I added a transparent layer over the glowing area. If you make a mistake, that's okay, just wait for the paint to dry, cover the mistake with some Bloodreaver flesh, and try again. Remember, the highlights should be lighter the closer they are to the glowing object, and the glow should fade out as it gets further away from the light source. If you'd like to see how I did the bases, check out my other Jade Warriors painting guide. I'd like to give a big shout out to our supporters here on YouTube and Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below or follow the Patreon link in the video description. Thank you. Painting these models was a fun change of pace, and I'm really happy with how fast they were to paint. I'm thinking about how I'd like to incorporate them in my army. I'm leaning towards having a few real humans leading each regiment, probably the models with more dynamic poses, and then fill up the rest of the troops with Terracotta Warriors. Or I may stick with just one regiment of all Terracotta troops. Lots to think about. How much customization and thought do you put into your armies? Do you write lore and meticulously plan every detail? Or just go with the flow? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting!